Hello and welcome to the next video in our Ask the Expert series. I'm Jane Steen and with me today is Steve Drake, Director of Technology at True North IT. Welcome, Steve.
Hi, Jane, thank you.
So today we're going to be talking about Application Lifecycle Management, or ALM, and why it's important. But before we sort of get into the detail, could you just explain for anyone who's new to it what Application Lifecycle Management actually is?
So application lifecycle management is just basically it's the journey that applications take from conceiving an idea to writing up what that idea is, to create user stories. Then the development team work on that idea, and then at the end of it they produce some code that then goes through a process where it gets automatic testing gets done against that code, it gets built automatically, and then it can then get pushed into downstream environments. So it can get pushed into a test environment, then into a UAT environment, then into a production environment. And all that is kind of done automatically or done with as least friction as possible for the business. So the developers put in the effort to reduce the friction for the business. At the end of the day, business users want to see features delivered by the software development team. So it's basically, it helps with that process.
Great, well thanks for that explanation. We're going to be focusing quite a lot on ALM within Power Platform today. So could you just explain how ALM for Power Platform is different from traditional ALM?
Yeah, so if you've got a traditional application where you've got source code, so you might have a C# library, you might have a web application, that's Node.js. You've got code, you develop code, you compile code, you've got source control against that code, and that can very easily, you build output, that can very easily move through the journey. With Power Platform, it's you're not really editing code. You're going into Make's website, you're making changes to forms, you're making changes to database schemas underneath here. So there's no real code. So what we have to do to make that work with ALM is you have to continuously export the metadata from Power Platform, push that into your source control repository, so then you can then run your ALM against the exported version. So you can review what's changed. You can do PRs against what's changed. So it's different because you're not editing code. It's metadata that you're modifying.
Sure. Okay. So just thinking about good application lifecycle management, how does that benefit business?
So good application lifecycle management benefits businesses because they can continuously see the solution evolving and improving. So if you're first starting software, if you're first starting a project, if you've got good ALM, you can have a series of say 10 sprints. If you've got good ALM, at the end of every single sprint, you've got something demonstrable, you've got something that's deployable, you've got something that can be deployed into test, into user acceptance testing, into production if production's ready. You can be doing that continuously throughout the life cycle of the application, rather than it being, all right, we're ready for a big release, let's release all that, and everybody's running around trying to get it working. If you're doing it continuously, then it's a proven, repeatable process that just works, and that's the idea. It just works. It reduces friction. It just works. That's the key thing there.
So it's far more efficient and more agile. Yeah, that's great. So if we move on to how ALM works in the real world, just walk me through your release journey.
Yeah, so some of our customers, so who have got more mature, they're more into their project, so they've got the system live. We can have some scenarios where salesperson will say, right, I'm really enjoying using this application you've delivered. I would like to change this form. So I would like to add these fields, do this calculation on this field, change this business process. So they'll discuss that internally. They'll come up with a user story about, to capture those requirements with clear acceptance criteria. That'll take about a week. Then once that's captured, the development team will review that requirement as part of their sprint planning. They'll then deliver that requirement in their sprint, through the 2-week sprint, and at the end of it, they'll demonstrate that to the customer and as a playback session. So 3 weeks I've gone now. I've had a week, where the customers rework that into a story. We've had 2 weeks where the development team have delivered that user story, and then it can then go into a UAT system for testing, and then once it's in UAT, it can then go into production, and all that's just clicking buttons to say, and the clicking the buttons is just to, it's just a formality to say it's ready. Yes, we approve it. What's next? Yes, we approve it. That whole thing could be 100% automated just on schedules. So it gets the business user 5 weeks from saying, about 4 weeks, 4 to 5 weeks from saying, I want this new feature. Can I have it, please? To being agreed, to actually being live in production, and that's the benefit that the business are getting.
Yeah, well, 4 to 5 weeks is so efficient, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's great. How do you manage and automate deployments?
So we use Azure DevOps. So once the code's pushed in, so the developers are working away, they're pushing in the code. That's automatically building releases that get pushed up to their development environment. So the development team have got their own dev. At the end of the 2 weeks, when the developers are ready, we then go through what's called a PR process. So we're basically peer reviewing everybody's code.
Right, yeah.
So most people understand how that works with things like C#, because you're just looking at code changes. But because Power Platform's like metadata driven, we're looking at schema changes. So I'll give a really simple example. If a user story says, I want a new field on a opportunities form, when we do the peer review of that code change, we're comparing what was exported the last time we did a release to what's exported now, and we make sure that the developers only modified the form that the user story says needs to be modified. We make sure that the developer hasn't included assets that are not needed in that release. We make sure that they've not they've not upset any other area of the system. So it's a manual process for the developers to peer review that, but that increases the stability of the system, which allows us to release every 2 weeks. Because if we didn't have these proper checks, then we can't trust the release is going to work. So once they've reviewed the system, we then collect all those exports together, we package them all up, and then we then push them into the test system automatically. And then once that's all been signed off and we're happy with that, we then push the same assets into the UAT system, all automatically through using Azure DevOps and code pipelines. We get complete traceability. We can see user story 5 is into production on this date, and this person worked on it, and these are the changes we made.
Yeah.
So doing all this automatically gives us full traceability, and it's just done automatically through Azure DevOps.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Thinking about low-code changes made via Power Apps Studio, how do you track and govern them?
Yeah, so as mentioned earlier, so they do a change to a form. We export that as XML, we compare that against the previous version that we exported, and then we can then link that to a user story, and then we can push that into the next downstream environment, and so that's how we track that.
That's great, okay. Question I always do wonder really is what if something breaks?
Yeah, so when something breaks, so if a customer says, so we've released something, we've done a massive change to this opportunities form, and one of the salespeople says, you've broke the sales process. We need that fixing yesterday, because we cannot, sell things because you've broken something, which I'm probably been a bit sensational there, but we do break things. It's human nature. Yeah, it happens. So what we can do then, we've got what we call a hotfix process. So we can turn in a really important hotfix, we can turn around in half a day, and we've done that before. Normally, it's 3 days. So the process we have there is we can do a tactical fix. We then produce a small asset, which is a hotfix. The hotfix then still goes through the ALM process, but it's kind of like a shortcut process. So what we do is we document the hotfix, we document how to release it, we document what it fixes through a wiki, and then the people in charge of doing the release can then say, right, I'll release hotfix, and then the hotfix are numbered against the bug that they address. So so the user has reported an issue, it'll be written up as a bug. So it might be bug number 1234. So then we'll have hotfix 1234.
Oh, yeah.
And then that hotfix goes into UAT and into production, normally on the same day. And then we then may make a more of a strategic fix to fix that problem. So they've got the hotfix out there in production, and that's there. And then when we're ready to strategically fix that issue, that then becomes part of the main solution. And when the main solution's released, it automatically removes the hotfix. So you don't end up with a system which is just plagued with hundreds of hotfixes, that just never get removed. We automatically remove those when we make another major release.
Yeah, that's good. So it keeps your system clean. Yeah. Okay. What do you do about features that take months to develop without delaying releases?
Yeah, so that does happen. Traditionally you'd use a feature toggle system where you'd have features on or off. Dataverse doesn't really support feature toggling, so what we do there is we create security roles that protect the features from the user. So we create a security role. So if you don't have the integration X feature security role, then you don't see that feature. But then it also lets us, we can then give that feature to people who are going to early pilot it. So we might say this isn't complete yet, but you can start testing on it in UAT. So so we can kind of go, okay, then we're going to give that to a set of users, or if it's completely not ready, just half developed, won't give it to anybody. But as it starts to get more mature, we can kind of say, right, we're going to let these users pilot this feature. We're going to do some testing of this feature. So we use standard Dynamics roles to kind of ring fence features.
Okay, that's great. Let's move on to the issues around environment management and maturity. How do you ensure consistency and safety across all the different environments? You've got dev, testing, production. How does that work?
Yeah, so we have a release pipeline in Azure DevOps that releases things we're coding in dev, so we release things into test, release things into UAT, release things into production. Even if we're developing, we don't release straight to test, because you can actually break a Dataverse environment if you do a bad release. So what we do is we release the stage. Once we're happy that our release works, then we'll release the test. Stage is completely throwaway. We can restore back up at any point of stage, so it's a throwaway environment. And then to maintain consistency around the other environments, when we create a release pipeline, it'll tell us this release version 3 has been released to test. It's not being released to UAT. It's not being released to production. And then when we're ready to release it to test, we basically click the test button. When we're ready to release to UAT, we enable the release to UAT. So at any point we can look and see what versions are in what environment at any point in time. So we're always consistent. Before we do a release, we've got a little dependency checker which runs to say that when this was released, it needed these dependencies. Are they all there? So we kind of do all that good governance. And interestingly, which kind of, if your ALM is really well structured and automated, then you don't need us developers to do the release. So we don't touch UAT or production for some of our customers. It's all done by the customer. So the customers have their internal IT team that manage the releases into UAT and production, and we just make sure that's possible by reducing the friction of the release, so they don't have any issue to just click a button and watch it work.
Great. So the customer has whatever level of control they want.
Yes.
Yeah, that's great. How do you manage Azure and non-Dynamics 365 services?
Yeah, so most of our projects have got a level of integration, so we tend to lean on Azure for integration. So we will, as part of a release, so if we're releasing a feature that isn't just Dataverse, isn't just Power Platform, it may have some Azure dependencies, we will also release those through Azure DevOps. So for Azure assets, we use Terraform. So we have, so basically as developers, we create Terraform scripts for all our Azure assets. They go through all the same things, the PR, the push to all the environments. So for the Azure assets, it's Terraform. For the functions, for the code for the functions, it's just standard Azure pipelines. But then everything is released at the same time. When we package a release, we know what all the dependencies are. So we know for integration X, we need to have the Azure assets terraformed, we need to have the functions, the code pushed to the functions, as well as the Power Platform, and it's just all done together at the same time through the same pipelines,
Okay.
etc.
Right. Can you give an example where ALM helped prevent an issue or it accelerated a delivery?
Yeah, so we do, so when we do our peer review, so the main things in the peer review, so you know we have had situations before where we've gone, right, you just work on opportunities form. When you've added that table, you've brought in too many dependencies. If we release that, then we might get issues downstream, which means it might cause dependency issues with releases. So that's kind of preventing an issue that may, because as developers we do make mistakes,
Yeah.
but because we're PR, we kind of reduce those mistakes.
Yeah.
So we do spot issues as part of the PR. With one of our customers, they got stuck on releasing, and I think they got stuck for about 2 years.
Oh my
Couldn't release for
goodness.
2 years, and now they're releasing every 2 weeks.
Wow.
And that's huge for them. They can really see
Yeah.
value in the investment they're making. They can see the value because they're released every 2 weeks rather than just be stuck because of a technical challenge,
Yeah.
because of a dependency issue, because the previous releases weren't PR'd and reviewed. So yeah.
What a massive difference that
Yeah, no,
is.
that's we're quite proud of that to be fair as a team.
Yeah. Um, so what advice would you give to someone who's starting out with ALM in Power Platform?
Yeah, just I say to be fair, our ALM process is quite complicated for some of our projects because it has to meet quite complicated needs. But we do have some simple versions as well that don't have all the Azure assets, etc. So if you're just starting now, I would basically, you can connect Power Platform environments to a GitHub repository, so you can use the features that are in the box. So I would start with them.
Yeah.
I would start peer reviewing changes, make sure you've got good DevOps, make sure you've got good user stories, you've got good tasks, you complete things, you finish things off. So once your DevOps is good, then everything else kind of that's your foundation. So good DevOps, then everything builds on top of your good DevOps, and using the features built into Power Platform for the environments, where you can connect those. So I say just good solid DevOps is a good foundation, and using the features of Power Platform to manage the
Okay,
exports.
that sounds a great place to start.
Yeah.
So that's it for today. Thank you very much for watching. If you'd like any more information, please do feel free to reach out to Steve via the True North website, and thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much.